And Quentin and I met through a friend of ours, Scott Spiegel. I had produced this little movie with Scott. It was my first movie. It was called Intruder. Sam Raimi was in it, and the whole thing took place in a grocery store. And it was really funny because, I was trying to be a producer, and I read this screenplay, True Romance, which I loved. And Scott introduced me to him. I met Quentin at Scott's house. I think it was like a 4th of July party. And I go, oh, Quentin Tarantino. I read a script by a name very similar to that called True Romance. He goes, that's me. I go, I don't think so. And he goes, no, that was me. I go, really? He was trying to convince me that he actually had written the script. And I said, man, I loved that script. It was fantastic. And he had Natural Born Killers already at that point, written that. But he was getting tired of trying to get that made. And so he said, I'm going to write this script, Reservoir Dogs. And it's about a bunch of guys that do a jewelry heist. And it all takes place like in a garage or someplace where they all come back afterwards. And he was actually intending it originally for everyone to get away. And of course, that doesn't quite happen. Which is one of the things that's great about the way Quentin writes is that he starts off with this intention and he creates these characters, but then the characters write the movie in a sense. He is in a sense God, but he's infused these characters with this ethos, and they end up walking through this world and create this world. And at the end of the movie, they created a different scenario than he had kind of started out with.
Originally, Reservoir Dogs was going to be shot for like $30,000. Quentin was going to do it with just him and a bunch of his friends.
He said, we'll do it in black and white, 16 millimeter. I'll play Mr. Pink. You'll play one of the characters. And I read the script and go, this is just, it's better than that. You need to let me go out and raise some money. And he says, I don't want to wait. I'm a director who has not directed, therefore I don't exist. And I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait years to raise money.
Meanwhile, my friend Chris Brancato, who's a big TV showrunner now, he was a good friend of mine and a young writer, and his roommate was Lawrence Bender. Lawrence Bender was PAing on another one of their friends' music videos, and I knew Lawrence a little bit also. And when I first started working at Jersey Films, I would always comb through the films in pre-production chart. And I'd always see if there were really good actors working with directors I had never heard of. And so then I would get the scripts and I would do the research. And there's the script, Reservoir Dogs, and it had all these amazing actors in it. So I got my hands on the script and I read it. And then I started calling. It was actually Scott Zimmerman at William Morris, I think his name was. And he was Quentin's original agent before Mike Simpson. Mike came on board in the process. And Lee Stolman, who was working for this guy, Scott, read it and said, this is really great. And he got Mike involved, and Mike became Quentin's agent.
The script had started to make the rounds around town, and we were really focusing on the independent market at that time. And one of the guys came in and told me, hey, this script, I read it, it's just really amazing. You've got to cancel whatever you're doing tonight because this guy's coming in tomorrow to have a casting meeting. You got to read it. I said, well, I've got to do this, that, and the other. He goes, it's really, really good. And I said, you're sure? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. So I canceled whatever I was going to do, and I stayed home and read it that night. And sure enough, it was like, one of the best scripts I'd ever read. Maybe at that time it was the best script I'd ever read.
I remember reading the script for the first time, and it's so funny because every script I've read of Quentin subsequently, I've had almost the identical reaction. But I sat in my office and I was reading the opening scene when they're in their diner and they're doing the Madonna dialogue and the dick, dick, dick and all that stuff. And I remember calling Howard and Bob into my office and saying, I've never read anything like this in my life. It's the first time I'm reading characters talking and each one of them has a voice. And I believe everything that I read on the page that he had written. And so often when you read scripts, you have to put a face to that voice. And what I loved about his writing was he put that face in your head. And I just remember reading it and just going, oh my God, I've never read anything like this. It blew me away.
The other thing about Quentin and the world of home video at the time, part of how Lawrence ended up in His partnership with Quentin was that he knew Harvey Keitel's acting coach. And there was a home video company that Richard Gladstein worked for, Live Entertainment. If you had Harvey Keitel, you got $1.5 million to make your movie. And since Lawrence knew somebody who knew Harvey, he said, just give me a month, because Quentin had been burned by all the permutations of when he was going to direct True Romance, when he wasn't. So basically, Lawrence said, please give me 30 days.
We're making Reservoir Dogs. I'm still in acting class, and I'm a PA on movie sets and commercials to make money. And my acting teacher said, out of anyone in the world, who do you want to be in this movie? And Quentin and I had talked about this quite a bit, and Harvey Keitel was our dream. So Peter Flood was my acting teacher at the time. His wife was also an acting teacher, Lily Parker. Lily was a member of the Actors Studio. And Lily gave the script to Harvey Keitel. And I'll never forget, I was at my girlfriend's house at the time. And I checked my messages on my machine. And I get a message from Harvey Keitel. And it's like this life-changing message that I will never forget. I just want to shoot myself that I didn't save this message. But like, hi Lawrence, it's Harvey Keitel calling. I just read this script, Reservoir Dogs, and this fellow Quentin Tarantino is really talented, and I'd love to help in any way I can. Please give me a call. It was like my dreams were about to come true in this just paradigm shift kind of phone call. So we all went over to his house, Quentin and Richard Gladstein and myself, and Harvey Keitel is bringing us out espressos. You're like, wait a minute, we're in a movie. Harvey Keitel is bringing us an espresso. I felt like I was in one of the movies that Harvey was in. So Harvey became attached to the movie. And that was the thing that enabled us to actually greenlight the movie. Harvey, attached to the budget that we were at, enabled us to greenlight the movie.
Keitel was Godfather the minute that I got the script, and one of the reasons why I read it was Harvey Keitel wants to be in this movie. I first read the script of Reservoir Dogs when Monty Hellman sent it to me. I had made a film with Monty years before. Monty called me up and said, I have this script for you to read. I said, I assume you want to direct it. He said, I would love to, but there's this kid who wrote it who's going to direct it. And for some reason, Monty dropped the script off at my house. And I worked at Live Entertainment, a home video company. For some reason, on my way into my house, I opened up the thing, I started reading it, and there's no description of the characters whatsoever. It just says 5 guys, black suits, sit around a diner, and then the dialogue starts. And I just started reading it, and I was immediately just completely freaked out by it and loved it. And I remember halfway through I stopped because I said, there's no way it's going to be able to sustain. And so I stopped and I took a walk, and then I came back and I finished it, and we made the movie like 4 months later or something.
So we're prepping the movie, and we're getting everything for free. We're working out of someone's place, and we're casting on the Fox lot. I mean, Ronnie Eskel was our casting director at the time. And so we're casting away. We have these great casting sessions. And we were, it'd be Harvey Keitel. So the people who were reading in the room would be Harvey, me, and Quentin, and the actor. And I never forget, Harvey would be sitting there reading, and it would just make some people really nervous. Sometimes Harvey didn't have his shoes on. I remember years later, I remember coming into the room, and it was Harvey Keitel, he didn't have his shoes on. and we every act would be there 15, 20 minutes, and we read scenes over and over and over again. And so we had a pretty good cast, a great cast. And Harvey said, you're almost done, and you've seen all these wonderful actors, but there are wonderful actors in New York too. And you should see them. And I said, Harvey, but Quentin and I are broke. We don't have any money to go to New York, and we don't have any money from the budget. And he said, okay, I'll pay for it. I'll take you guys to New York. So we left. So we cast all day on Friday. We took the red eye Friday night. I'll never forget, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, when Quentin and I were in coach and Harvey's in first class, and we meet in the middle, and he says, guys, someday you're going to be in first class, but now it's on my dime, so you're in coach. But he said, trust me, someday you're going to be in first class too, and we laughed. And we get off the plane, we go straight to his buddy. Todd Thaler had given us his space in New York to cast out of. Harvey put us up in the Mayfair Hotel. with his own money. And there we are in the casting room on Reservoir Dogs. And there's a room full of 20 guys out there waiting to get in. And for a while there, I'm playing the cop who's tied up in the chair. And we'd have to say, sorry, no knives, no guns. People would pull out a gun, they'd pull out their knives. And Quentin would have to sometimes Quentin would say, oh, stop, time out, stop the audition, no knives. Literally, no guns. And they'd be choking me, the chair would get flown over, the room was sweaty. And in came Steve Buscemi. And there was something about Steve Buscemi. It was like, okay, this guy has got to be in the movie. And Quentin made him Mr. Pink. And so if Harvey did not bring us to New York City, we would have never cast Steve Buscemi. We had seen the movie that he was in, this wonderful little movie he had done, and we liked him, but we wouldn't have cast him unless Harvey brought us to New York. So Harvey brought us to the Russian tea room, and we're having a coffee. And of course, being from New York, I'd never been to the Russian tea room. I could never afford to be in that place. And Harvey were talking, and I said to Harvey, you've done so much on this movie. We want to make you a co-producer. He says, boys, what's taking so long? I've been waiting to hear from you. It's about time. We all laughed, and that's how Harvey kind of became a producer on the movie. And he became like a big brother to Quentin and I. Because in the making of Reservoir Dogs, from time to time, he would come to me and he'd say, Lawrence, this scene that Quentin's doing is really important, and he doesn't have enough time. And I know you're limited. You have a certain amount of time. You have a budget you have to make. But you just want to make sure that this scene's really important and he's getting what he needs. And so just want to think about it. And he was just so thoughtful. But he made me think, because it was my first time making a movie like this. So I go to Quentin and I say, Quentin, what do you think? Do you have the time you need to finish this? Do you need a few more hours? We'll go overtime, find the money someplace. And it was kind of the beginning of how Quentin and I started working together in terms of me making sure Quentin got everything he needed, because these scenes were so damn important, because it's all about the acting and the way he shot it. So Harvey became like our godfather. He became our big brother in a sense.
At the time, Bob Kurtzman, who was one of the founding members of K&B, wanted to do a vampire movie. So Scotty had recommended Quentin. So Quentin sent over Natural Born Killers and True Romance as his spec scripts. He's like, there's this guy. He's doing a lot of script polishing now, but here's 2 scripts that he had written. So Bob read the scripts. Him and Quentin hit it off, and so Bob made a deal. We'll do all the effects for Reservoir Dogs for free in exchange for you writing this movie for me, From Dusk Till Dawn. I think Quentin took that money. I think he actually moved out of his house in Glendale, and that was definitely a life-changing event for all of us involved because of that. And I think that Quentin was doing a lot of script doctoring, but I think that was really sort of like the first time he had gotten a check, and it was a minuscule amount of money, but it was also like, now I got an effects house on board to do Reservoir Dogs. So I think that that all those things sort of happened all at the same time.
We were just getting into pre-production, and we were casting and so forth, and everything was kind of on the road to going, and we were maybe 8 weeks away or 10 weeks away from shooting, and Quentin got into the lab, and he said, I really want to go to Sundance. And I think it'd be really great for me. And I said, I think it's a great idea too. I'll hold the fort down here. I'll keep pre-production going, and you go away and do your thing and come back, which is what he did.
What was interesting is that he was, our lab, our June director's lab is a month, is a month long. It's a director's lab, and it's also a screenwriter's lab at the end of the lab. And he said, I'm in pre-production or pre-production. I can only be there for, I think it was 2 weeks. And I said, fine, we'll make it work for you for 2 weeks.
I don't think Quentin ever blossomed into a director. I think he was sort of born that way because he just did what he wanted to do. And it just innately and instinctively, he just does it.
And something that he did, which was really smart, and not many directors have done it, is he just decided he was going to do several scenes, and he decided that one of the scenes he wanted to do was a scene that wasn't in the script. And he wanted to do it to just kind of explore character, but he needed to know that he could problem solve on his feet as a director. And that was an important thing for him. So I remember saying, great, you've got your actors here, do whatever, do it, let's do it. And I love, for me, it's so much fun when directors just want to keep pushing the boundaries, not only of their work, but also of what they can achieve, as a director. And I thought, if you're going to go out and make a movie, the best, what a great idea. Yes, figure it out. So he wrote a scene that night. He brought it to the next day, and they rehearsed it and they shot it that day, and he edited it the next day. And it's a scene that's not in the film. I love this scene. It doesn't belong in the film. But it was a really incredible scene, and it was a scene about character, and it was a scene about Joe, who's kind of running the heist, and he's talking about a book that that he's just read called The Bell Jar, by Sylvia Plath. Now that is about as far from a book that you read, and he's telling Steve Buscemi, you should read it. And it was that scene, it was so simply shot and put together, but it was so revealing of character in a really interesting way. And actually one of the best scenes ever done at the lab, I think, in terms of clarity. And he, and I think that was a scene that, for him, that sort of offered him that, that one opportunity to test his skills out, but also really giving him the confidence that he could, he would be fine. He could take on anything that came his way, that he would ultimately figure it out, because he knew these characters so incredibly well. So that kind of experimenting, that kind of collaboration with his actors, deciding to shoot it in a more conventional way, I thought was just, was genius, actually, for his lab experience.
He came back, he had this amazing experience. There were all these great different directors and people giving him their advice. And he shot a couple scenes, and then we went into pre-production to make the movie.
I had gotten a call from Lawrence Bender, the producer of the film, and he said, we're looking for an editor. We don't have much money. So we're looking for somebody who's, kind of emerging, as an editor. And every once in a while, the light bulb goes off, and there is there's that sense of you can connect two kindred spirits together, and two, sort of creative, spirits together. And there was something, it was just pure, intuitive, instinctively, thought. I mean, who knew that he would hire her? But I said, you have to meet, Sally. And Sally had also just moved out to LA from New York at that time, or recently moved out. So she was new, and I know that she wanted to work in film. And I also knew that she had a great love of Marty Scorsese films, and and also that relationship between Marty and Thelma Schumacher was something that she really valued. And she also had, her kind of far-reaching and eclectic taste, and I thought she would really respond to the material in a big way.
I mean, Sally had, came from documentaries, and then she was just starting to do dramas. So she was in that zone where she was reading the low-budget art films, and she had the same reaction. She actually said, you got to read this right now.
It was, one of those, kind of great meetings. She didn't know what was going to happen, in terms of whether he was going to hire her or not, but they really spoke the same language.
She desperately wanted to do it, so much so that she kept making sure that everyone knew where she was at all times, and she kept calling her agent to find out if anything had happened. It's now about a week later, and we're on a family vacation in the middle of absolutely no place. I mean, surrounded by mountains. We're on a tiny little road in the middle of the Canadian wilderness, and she demands that we stop and find a telephone. We find this one phone. There's literally nothing else around it for 20 miles. It's sitting on a road in the middle of the mountains, and she gets out and makes a phone call and gets the job. And I'm in the car, and I see her dancing around the phone, like, woo, like that. So that's where she found out that she got the job. She really, for some reason, it was just like magnets, you know. She just, it was the script, but it was Quentin really that she wanted. She wanted to work with him.
We started working on the script, kind of talking about it. I mean, he'd come over to my apartment and pace around, which was about the size of a shoebox, and pace about. And in fact, was going to move into the apartment across the hall from me, which would have meant I'd get even less sleep. And we would discuss it, you know, back and forth. And at one point, I think he was thinking about playing one of the larger characters, and I suggested to him it's probably not a good idea because there's a lot to do in 5 weeks, and you could tell he had the energy to take everything on, but kind of we needed a director, you know, someone there all the time. It was because it was actually quite a complicated film, but we all knew it was that he had talent just from the script, and then from the conversations with him, you know, the way he was, and then when we were filming it, I discussed that with Harvey one day, you know, saying, "What do you think?" I think this is really good, and it was.
I'll never forget, because I had all the boxes of the delivery items for Reservoir Dogs in my apartment. I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate, Chris Brancato, who's a writer now. And on the way to Sundance, I drove to Sundance, and on the way to Sundance, I stopped to drop off all the boxes and the film to Richard Gladstein, who was our executive at Live Entertainment. So I drive into the valley, and I have a little tiny red Toyota that I had for like 15 years. And I drive up, and I have all these boxes of all the contracts and all this stuff, tons and tons of stuff, and the reels. And I drop it off, and I'm in Richard Gladstein's office, and he looks at me with a big smile and says, "Congratulations, how does it feel to be unemployed?" I'm like, oh my God. It never even occurred to me that I've been working this whole year, and now that basically meant officially the movie was done. It was handed over, and I had no job left in a sense. And we laughed. And I jumped in my car, and it was like a 10 or 12-hour drive basically from LA to Sundance. And it was really kind of exciting. I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to Sundance. And it was really exciting to be there. There's this Saturday morning on the first weekend of Sundance. It's like a filmmakers breakfast. And it's actually out at Sundance. Everyone drives out, and it's only the filmmakers and Robert Redford's there, and all the different Sundance people are there. And you're getting to meet all the other filmmakers, which I never met, and Quentin, of course. We all went out there, and it was just a great, just nothing I'd ever experienced before.
I remember all of us getting in a car because we didn't have a whole lot of money and driving up to Sundance. I think that was the first time that we realized that it was going to be a hit. The first time Sally realized that something she had cut was going to be a hit. I mean, she'd been involved in the movies going out, but not this kind of reaction.
The first public screening of Reservoir Dogs was at the multiplex in Park City, and the film was scope, and they didn't have the right mat.
Some of the movie was on the outside on the walls, not where it was supposed to be. It came around, and it looked slightly out of focus. And I said to Quentin, "Man, it's a little out of focus." And he said, don't worry, it's okay." He's making me feel better. And at the end of the movie, right during the Mexican standoff, the power went out, and the lights went out, everything went out, and it was complete blackness. I couldn't believe it. And finally get all the power back on, the movie kept going. And I was standing in the back, people going out, and they were like, "Hey, congratulations, Lawrence, great movie." And it was really like, wow, it was really, it was one of those amazing just amazing moments.
The thing I remember about first showing it at Sundance was that there were people that were very angry about that there was this much violence in the movie. And in the Q&A, people were a little bit up in arms about how could Sundance show a movie that so-called glorified violence. And I remember Quentin standing up and going, look, like, you saw the picture that was in the little brochure asking you to come here. It's these guys with these guns. You read the description. What did you expect you were going to see? And if you don't like it, you should just leave. Like, I made what I wanted to make, and Sundance asked if we'd come, and we came. What do you want from me?
That was screening number 1. Screening number 2 in Salt Lake City, there was a film burn, and the print actually caught on fire. And the negative, and the print burned. And then the third one, everything was okay.
The reaction was explosive. I remember there were people who loved it, people who hated it. There was all kinds of reactions in the audience. But the one thing that everybody knew right there that night was that here was a new voice. Here was somebody who was really kind of blowing the doors off of cinema at the time, and that he was going to be a real force. You could tell that early on.
I've always felt with Quentin, which I love about his work, is that he's like an orchestra conductor in a way. I mean, he is, you are leaning forward and, in certain moments you're laughing, at other moments you're like, it's brutal in other moments. But he is so in control of the story that he's telling and the tools that he's using to tell that story. So the audience was with it at every moment. It was truly one of the most exciting premieres that we've had ever, at Sundance.
I was in shock. Watched the movie. From the first second it started, I was just mesmerized, and wrote him a letter, which I wish I still have the old computer that I initially wrote stuff on. I'll bet you it's still on there. But I wrote him this big long letter, and it said, now I remember why I came to Hollywood. I mean, it was so inspirational to me to see what someone with vision and passion and enthusiasm and love could do.
He was just the talk of Sundance, and it's sort of shocking that he didn't win Sundance.
Yes, it did not win, but it got a great launch. It was probably the film that was most remembered at the festival that year, and it was it was the launch of a great and enduring career.
We didn't sell the film for 3 months after Sundance. So for 3 months, nobody bought the movie. And it was only about, Sundance is in January, February. That's right, because then we went to Cannes with the movie, with Reservoir Dogs, and it was just like a month before Cannes. So in April, that Miramax bought the film, the theatrical and television rights, and Live Entertainment, who financed the movie where I worked, retained the home video.
So the dream was to get into Sundance, to win it, to have Harvey Weinstein, Miramax, like the movie and release it, and then ultimately and to get into Cannes.
Harvey Weinstein is larger than life in every way. He is the only version of the great film moguls that we have left working today. He loves movies. He lives for movies. He's seen movies the way Quentin's seen movies. So how would that not be an instant and perfect and enduring marriage?
I'll never forget arriving in Cannes. We take the bus in from the airport, and I'm carrying my big suitcase, and it's hot. And someone said to me, I think it was Jerry Hofstetter, yelled out, said, "Bender!" I look around and said, don't you know you're in Cannes? You're not supposed to carry your own suitcase anymore. We're walking down to our hotel. And that was just one of those, being in Cannes for the first time. I was still broke. Quentin was broke. And you're in this very fancy place with all these big boats and beautiful hotels and movie stars, and we're going. I just left Hollywood where these riots, and it was a very horribly exciting time, to now the excitement of Cannes. And I'll never get with Harvey Keitel and Quentin and Tim Roth and walking up the red carpet for the midnight screen of Reservoir Dogs was one of these just never had a tuxedo before, you know.
Well, we kind of went everywhere with it in shifts. We did all the festivals. We would go. I mean, we'd see everyone in Spain, or maybe so and so couldn't make it to Spain. They'd see you in France, and so on. So we and then Cannes. We knew. We just knew it was popular. If we'd had more distribution power, it would have been even more successful at that time, I think. But that was the sort of the plight of the indie movie, was that you couldn't break into these multiplexes, because Iron Man 53 was playing, and filling up every screen. So it was even at that time it was tricky. But it was a better time for independent film, by far, than it is now.
He hit every festival. He saw the world. He watched hundreds of movies all over the world and became, a citizen of world cinema and a citizen of the world.
I remember a couple of very specific times with Quentin, because when we went to Sundance, Quentin had barely been out of California. So we went to Sundance, we showed the movie, he's now a director. But, the movie hadn't been sold yet, it hadn't come out yet, people hadn't really seen the movie, so he's just this guy. And then in Cannes, after we showed the movie, it was in a midnight screening, out of competition in the Palais. In the couple of days right after that, when we would be walking in Cannes along the Croisette, the main street, people started to sort of recognize him, because he also has a small part in the movie. And the movie just started to build this buzz, and we would walk down the street and people would go, Quentin Tarantino. A couple of people started asking for his autograph, and I was sort of like, this is really interesting. And then right after it showed, our international sales company was a company called Carolco. And Carolco made these huge movies, Basic Instinct and The Doors, and a very, very large scale, Total Recall, Terminator 2. And they had all of their directors in Cannes promoting their new slate of movies. And Jim Cameron, Oliver Stone, Paul Verhoeven, they saw Reservoir and they wanted to meet Quentin. And so suddenly we were invited to the big boat, and all these directors wanted to talk to him, and this buzz sort of started.
The film is perfectly modulated. I mean, he was doing so much with cinema that I hadn't seen before. And, the greatest thing is, it's a heist film where you don't see the heist. I mean, how great is that? This was one of the first nonlinear films that I think works at such a gorgeous operatic level, that all those choices that were made both in the screenplay and the writing and in the directing, but also in the cutting, just sort of delivers on, I believe, a vision that really reinvents a genre in an exciting way.
I remember I was in film school, and I went to see this movie at 3rd Avenue and 11th Street, and I was on a date, and it was one of those classic experiences where everyone in the theater was screaming. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was so happy. It was just the most violent movie that I'd seen in years, and I literally had tears of joy in my eyes while watching it. I was like, finally, someone who understands what I want to see in a movie.
I remember when I first saw Reservoir Dogs, they're a Telluride. It's a pretty reserved audience, but they loved those pictures. They really enjoyed it, and I was watching really to see about Quentin, because I'd heard about him, and it was great seeing him in the movie, because then I already could put a face to the name. Oh, there's Quentin. I'm going to meet him next month, and I was just so excited that there was another young filmmaker making movies, because growing up in high school. And then when I got to college, I didn't know anybody else making movies. I mean, I came from San Antonio, Texas, and moved to Austin, and I just didn't know anybody who made films. So it was a dream of mine to meet somebody else. I mean, there was no internet and things back then. You couldn't just find friends around the country that also do what you do. So I knew we would hit it off, because we obviously loved the same types of things. And I was just amazed by what he did. I mean, I was amazed by the movie. And I couldn't wait to meet him. Just his command of the cinema already in his first film, and his and of course his use of dialogue and his characters, and I could tell he was a really strong director just by the way he handled the actors that he had. I mean, there were some really tough personalities, very singular personalities, and for him to be able to wrangle them together, get their respect, and get those performances out of them, some of their, career best performances, definitely meant this guy was it was clear that he was the man. Right from that movie, you could just tell he was gonna pave a big way for himself.
20 years ago, Robert and I had just started, Mariachi was starting to make the festival circuit. The first festival was Telluride, which was early September. The next festival was Toronto. And, I'd been hearing about this Quentin Tarantino guy and Reservoir Dogs and all of this stuff. And, I always would read a lot about movies because I love movies. And I hadn't gotten to see his movie. But I really wanted to see it. And when I found out that he was going to be in Toronto, I got really excited. And I kind of had a feeling, because Robert really didn't know a lot of people like himself.
Both our first films were similar. Both had guys in black, both were violent. And we ended up having to do panel discussions together in Toronto. One of the panels was violence in movies in the 90s, and it was only 1992. We thought that was funny. We were there defending our artistic vision. We just happened to have the two bloodiest movies in the festival. And we hit it off right away. He said, I heard about you through your agent, Robert Newman, and I'd heard about him. And I remember him coming up to my hotel room after he saw Mariachi. Actually videotaped his reaction to El Mariachi, because I would tape the audience reactions at the festivals, figuring it's probably the one and only movie I ever get to make, so I taped everything. So I always had the tape running. So I have tape of a whole laugh track of Quentin laughing all through El Mariachi. And after the screening, we went up to my room and he said, you're gonna really like my next movie. I'm working on a movie. I'm writing a script right now called Pulp Fiction. And it's 3 stories, and it'll be told kind of like Reservoir Dogs, non-linear and out of order. But he said, you're really gonna like that.
When I saw Quentin and Robert come into the room, he came into our hotel room. It was like watching magic, 2 brothers that hadn't known each other existed, And to start at that ground zero, Quentin had already been going since Sundance through the festival, so this was kind of his end of his run of the festival, and this was Robert's beginning of a run. And to be able to find someone like that, a friend that has been a lifelong friend to both of us, was really special, and I never forgot that moment. I even remember what everybody was wearing, which is interesting. Such a visual, it was beautiful.
The bond I had with Quentin was just fantastic, because it was a peer who is doing spectacular things, and it pushes you to achieve more than you would normally. So usually you're putting your own bar on yourself if other people around you aren't pushing you. And so they always say, if you want to get better at something, change your peer group. Go get around people who are just much better than you, and you will rise up. And it was amazing what he could pull off. I mean, I remember he came to me. He was telling me about a film that he did. He said, I just finished this film, and I don't know, it still feels like a kind of movie Quentin would make. It doesn't feel like a real movie. And I was trying to be a good friend and go look at the bright side of it. He's obviously disappointed. I said, well, it's good. It's good that it's not like every other movie. It's good that it's different. It's better that way. You don't want it to be like everyone else's movie. He was just like, I don't know, it just didn't come out like I expected. And it turned out to be Pulp Fiction. He did not know.
As his second movie, Quentin was very smart. He was very studious as a filmmaker. And he understood that the second movie was almost more important than the first movie as a director. And he wanted to make sure that his second movie was really successful. There's something called sophomore jinx. And you can make a good first movie, but if you make a bad second movie, you go into director jail. But if you make a good second movie, then you can mess up on 1 or 2 movies, but you still have a career, because twice in a row, you can't have, it's not a coincidence.
He is a true director in the Roger Corman way too, because he's always thinking about how to make his movie more economically, and he's got a strategy. There's nothing that's haphazard in anything Quentin does. There's divine intervention at times and magic that happens, and he always leaves room for that, but he's got a plan on everything.
So Quentin wrote Pulp Fiction, and I'll never forget him turning it in, and it said, Pulp Fiction, final draft, 165 pages long, and every letter on that thing was just amazing. Every word, every page was just a killer. And he had lists of everybody he wanted to be in it.
Pulp Fiction was an interesting story because in this case, Quentin was coming from a place where he needed some money. He didn't make anything really on Reservoir Dogs. And he doesn't live large at all, but there's a difference between living large and living, period. And he was at that level where he really needed some money. So we got together for a meeting and said, so Quentin, tell me, like, just blue sky, the whole thing, blank piece of paper here. Tell me everything you want to have in the movie and your deal, and let's see what we can do. And so he kind of ran down, a number of things that were business levels that filmmakers who had been around for a long time with a lot of hits had in their deals. And I don't mean this to be necessarily the financial side, but did include that, but also the control and the ability to, have the final cut, designate the cast, things like this.
And everybody had seen Reservoir Dogs and thought it was brilliant too. But people were terrified of the violence, of the tone, of how fresh and new it was, its uniqueness, him.
So the first move was to make this deal with TriStar because we felt that they would, by putting it through Danny DeVito's company, we could acquire a lot of the artistic controls that he was looking for. We'd also have a very good financial deal on the back end that we would share. But we also felt that at the end of the day, TriStar would not make the movie, which was maybe the most attractive thing about the deal prospect in all, because we could get him paid to write the script, but we could get the script back if they didn't greenlight it immediately when he turned it in.
We went into Mike Medavoy's conference room. Quentin really admired Mike Medavoy because of the Orion films, and he sat there and lectured us as to the meetings with senators he'd had about violence in cinema. And he had a giant poster of Cliffhanger, which was a very violent action movie, behind him, and how it had made $100 million in a certain amount of time behind him, so he didn't really see the irony, and proceeded to tell us that because our film was too violent, he was going to pass on it. And every major studio followed suit and passed on Pulp Fiction.
So it was amongst the first scripts that I gave to Harvey as I'd like to make this movie. And he said, what is this thing? And I said, it's Quentin's new script, it's called Pulp Fiction. And he looked at it, and it was 160 pages. So it kind of felt like a telephone book, not like a screenplay. And he said, well, it's 160 pages. What is this thing? Come on. And so I explained to him, you need to read it right away because we have a little bit of a jump on it. And he said, I'm getting on a plane right now, so are you telling me I need to read it on the plane? And I said, yes, you need to read it on the plane, and you need to read it today. And he said, you want to make this movie? And I said, yes, I really want to make this movie. He said, you love it? And I said, I love it. 2 hours later, my phone rings, and it's Harvey from the airplane, and he says, oh my God, that first scene is fucking brilliant, oh my God. Does it stay this good? I go, yeah, it stays that good. He goes, okay, stay in the office. So I said, okay. I hang up the phone. An hour later, he calls up and he goes, are you crazy? And I go, what? He goes, I mean, you killed the main character in the middle of the script. What's wrong with you guys? And I said, Harvey, just keep reading. And he goes, but this is crazy. You can't kill the main character in the middle of the movie. I said, Harvey, just keep reading. And he goes, oh my God, he comes back, doesn't he? And I said, Harvey, just keep reading. And he goes, start negotiating. So I hang up the phone, and then he calls back like an hour later. And he goes, I love it. Are you closed yet? And I said, Harvey, no, I just started, and I'm trying to buy it. He's like, well, hurry up. I love this thing.
Harvey obviously was all over it and wanting it. Live was too, because they had just done Reservoir Dogs, and a French company that no longer exists, CB DeMille, was also very hot for it. All three of them wanted to do it. We talked to everybody, but we really knew we wanted to make this deal with Harvey and Miramax. We got all the other points done, and we got down to that last point, which was that Quentin could designate the cast. And he was saying right up front, it's going to be John Travolta playing the lead. And, it was about 12:30 midnight here in LA. It must have been 3 or 3:30 in New York where Harvey and Bob were. And it was really Harvey saying, look, we've agreed to everything else. We hear you, but on this point, we really have to, let's just leave it for later. We'll see. Maybe it'll wind up, it'll be fine, but let's just close the deal now and we'll deal that later. And we said, no, you have to, if you want the movie, if you want to close the deal, you have to agree to that. You have to agree to it right now. In fact, you have to agree to it within the next 15 seconds. And we started counting down, and I'll have to give it to Bob. At about 8, Bob jumped in and said, Harvey, let's just say yes. We're going to make this movie. We'll figure it out one way or the other. And they did. They agreed. And John Travolta was the lead in the movie, and the rest is history.
There were so many people that called. And, of course, it was tempting because at that time, John's career wasn't what it became after Pulp Fiction or what it was in his early days.
The script had gotten out, and Bruce Willis and Daniel Day-Lewis had both read it and on their own said, I want to play that role.
Quentin wasn't going to cast anyone other than John Travolta. So no matter who read it, no matter who said that they wanted to play it, no matter what came up, no matter who said they wanted to send it to someone, no matter what actor called up and said, I read it and I want to be that guy, Quentin's answer was always, no, I cast John, so sorry.
Whether I do well or not do well, this is my thinking at the time, is that I've already had a career that's of substance and I will deal with it and always have something to do. He may not. So as much as he's dropping the gauntlet for you, you better drop the gauntlet for him too. You better get your act together and put your best performance on, because whatever it's going to take to pull this philosophical, heroin-addicted, hitman and deliver it to a level that is worthy, you better get your ass in gear and do it. So I did. I gave it everything I had, but of course the character's so relaxed that, I couldn't give it. You can't look like you're giving it that energy. Matter of fact, you better look like you're giving it the other energy, which is no energy, in order to come off effectively.
Foot massage. That's it. Mm-hmm. Then what did Marcellus do?
Sent a couple of cats over to his place. They took him out on his patio, threw his ass over the balcony. Nigga fell 4 stories. Had a little garden down at the bottom, closed in glass like a greenhouse. Nigga fell through that. Since then, he kind of developed a speech impediment.
That's a damn shame.
It was logical of Harvey to question the choice of John Travolta. It wasn't crazy. But ultimately, he went with it. And I remember when we showed him the movie, a rough cut when we were done, after 15 minutes, he said, boy, I'm so glad I cast John Travolta in this part. What a great idea I had. Laugh, 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 because we all knew that it was not the easiest choice, but one that once you saw it, you easily could see what Quentin saw and why it was the perfect choice. Bruce wanted to play the main part. Mm-hmm. And I remember we said, well, Quentin asked him if he wants to play Butch. And we were sitting there and Quentin said, okay, and he called him up and he said, Bruce, will you play Butch? And Bruce said, well, I'll read it again tonight and I'll call you tomorrow. And Quentin said, great, hung up the phone. The next day we're sitting there in the morning, phone rings, and it's Bruce, and Bruce says, I read it again, I'm in. It was that easy. Mm-hmm. It was shocking to me, because that doesn't happen on my other movies so easily.
Reservoir Dogs was a big hit on video. This movie, $8 million, with this kind of cast, there was no way we could lose with $8 million. So I did a budget, and the budget was like, I don't remember exactly, but I'd say it was about $7 million. So I said, okay, we're up to 7. So 8 million is our topper. So we have $1 million or with some number like that. We give all the rest of the money away to the actors. And that way, that'll be our top point. And we divided that number up equally per week. So I said, okay, well, here's Uma and Sam Jackson and John Travolta and Bruce Willis, and Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth. And so all these guys, gals are working for X amount of weeks. So I added the total amount of women and man weeks together and divided into whatever the number was, 1 million. And we came up to 20,000 a week. So whether you're Chris Walken working for 1 week or you're John Travolta working for 7 weeks, you would be paid $20,000 a week.
Everybody on those movies worked for less money because we were making them for, in total, less money. So it wasn't just that the actors were taking a haircut, it's that in order to keep the price of the movie at a very manageable level, the casts are vast, and you can't start paying people in some uneven fashion.
The thing is, making movies are always hard. Making Pulp Fiction was not an easy movie by any means. At one point, I had to somehow fit Harvey Keitel into the schedule. I had to go to every single other actor and ask their permission to change the schedule a certain way. Everyone did because Harvey Keitel was like God to everybody. But it was very complicated. Making Pulp Fiction was not easy, but it was just a joy. It was this amazing kind of sense that you were doing something special. Now, we didn't know we were changing film history, but we really felt like we were doing something very special. And every time you were shooting, you felt like you were shooting a certain movie because at one point you're shooting John Travolta and Sam Jackson. And that whole story was over, and then another story. And all of a sudden you're shooting Harvey Keitel, and you're shooting Bruce Willis, and then you're shooting Uma. And so what would happen is one group of actors would be on the set, and then their time on the set were over, and they leave, and it would be really sad because they're gone, they're not coming back. But then all of a sudden, Uma Thurman would show up, or Christopher Walken would show up. They hadn't been there yet. And so there's a new excitement of almost like a new cast, almost like making a new movie.
When I showed up, I had my script. My script was kind of annotated. It was color-coded. Yeah, because I do all these different things to my script. So I had my lines in one color, I had my actions in another color, scene numbers in another color. I had stuff in the margins already, and he was like, "What is all that?" And we started talking about it, and Quentin told him, "Don't mess with this guy." He knows what he's doing. So all of a sudden, John realized, okay, well, we have to get in this. But, he made us do stuff like go to dinner and, hang out. Just go somewhere and talk, or just go somewhere and hang out, or go somewhere and smoke a cigarette. And we would do that. So he kind of forced us to have this relationship that looked like we'd known each other for a very long time, because that was the first time we met. And then we just kind of instantly fell in love and just kind of started hanging out together and being very close and, finishing each other's sentences and stuff. So it was very cool like that. But John's just he's the loveliest guy in the world. It's amazing how big his heart is and how hard he works and is willing to work on stuff. So we got to those characterizations pretty quick.
Jules, look, what happened this morning, man, I agree, it was peculiar. But water into wine,
All shapes and sizes, Vincent.
Don't fucking talk to me that way, man.
If my answers frighten you, Vincent, then you should cease asking scary questions.
I'm gonna take a shit.
First thing I did was I interviewed a bunch of heroin addicts, I'd already played a hitman in Robert Altman's The Dumb Waiter, so I kind of had that viewpoint down. I kind of knew the glee of irresponsibility that people who kill people have, that, it's thou shalt not murder is what they're disobeying. Killing is another moral code. You have to kill to eat, you have to kill in war. It's a different moral code, but murder is intentional and unacceptable. But in a criminal's mind, they have justified it. So I got that part down. Like I could see how I could play an irresponsible guy towards killing. But I didn't know what the drug world was at that level. So in interviewing these heroin addicts, I took copious notes. And finally, before I let go of the white-collar guy that was a heroin addict, I said, okay, you're more the tone I want to play because your description of heroin is better than the street guy's description, even though I got some cool things from him. I need to know what I could do, because I don't want to take heroin, to be the closest thing to the feeling. He said, there's nothing. I said, I need something. You got to come up with something. So he thought about it, came back, and he said, okay, if you get really plastered on tequila and you lie in a warm pool of water, and the high of heroin is here and the low of heroin is here, you'll come up and skim the bottom of the feeling of heroin. I said, cool, I could do that. That was acceptable to me. So I did that. And I got that whole euphoric buzz. That's where the half eyes closed and the feeling, the warmth through the body. And he described heroin in waves and ups and downs. And I designed the peak of it and the low of it. The peak of the heroin was in the car driving to see Mia, and then the low of it was, of course, at the end of the evening when, I'm putting the needle in her heart and I'm sobering up, and that's kind of the low of it. I got to orchestrate, because whether Quentin was conscious of it or not, he orchestrated a beautiful rise and fall of the evening of heroin. Anyway, I gathered enough information that I could really pull together a performance that I felt would be something that he would like. And that I went beyond his expectations thrilled me to no end, because he deserved that.
My memories of the film are really of the process itself, more than anything else, and what a joy it was, and how delightful Quentin and the cast was. We all just clicked.
Cannes in 1994 was Uma, Bruce, Sam, John, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth. Everyone hit the Croisette at the same time. And it was crazy. You could feel the energy in the air that all these guys and gals just came to Cannes at the same time. And we all stayed at the Carlton. I think Bruce and John, they stayed at the Hotel du Cap, where all the big movie stars stay. And Quentin and I were kind of stayed more in the thick of it at the Carlton. And, for me, this is the beginning of my career. I'd never been taken care of like this before, You got a car and driver, and they take care of your dry cleaning, and your meals are paid for, and it was like a whole new world.
I had to go and buy a jacket because I didn't even have a tuxedo or anything with me. I was like, "You're supposed to dress up? Oh, okay, let me go buy something." So I went around the corner and bought a jacket, and it was the most amazing thing. And it's kind of overwhelming. The first time you do it, you go up those steps and then you stop and turn around, and people are still screaming and shouting. And even though nobody really knew who I was like, who's that black guy with those people? Who's the black guy with the stars?
What was wonderful was, ever since I'd known Quentin from 1990, I guess, I think I met Quentin in 90. We made Reservoir Dogs in 91, came out in 92. So now here we are in 94. And so about 4 years I've known Quentin. And Quentin was such an extraordinary film buff, film historian, film understander and lover of film, and talked about it with enormous passion from the day I met him. But all of a sudden here he's talking about it as a filmmaker at the Cannes Film Festival, saying a lot of the same stuff, but now with an international stage with a big movie behind him. And it was really wonderful. It was really, it was all of a sudden he got to flourish and got to spread his wings and be in the middle of really where he deserved to be with his peers. And everybody was just reacting in such a positive way. And so I'll never forget, because this is the first time we've ever done the Croisette in the Cannes cars. And so you have I don't know, it felt like 20 cars, and everybody was in their own car. And you drive down the Croisette, and there's people 5, 10 thick, screaming, and there's the car can barely fit between them. This is long rides, like a 20-minute ride.
People are rocking John's car. It's like yelling, Uma, Bruce, Bruce, Bruce. They're screaming, and I'd never seen that many photographers on a set of stairs. It's like hundreds of photographers, so it's blinding.
And you get out, and you got this big red carpet, and all John and Bruce and Sam and Uma and Quentin, everyone's there, walking up the red carpet together. It was just one of those just incredible things that, first-time experiences.
It's pretty amazing to sit in a theater full of a majority of people that don't speak English, and they're reading the movie. I mean, I'm used to reading movies because I like Korean and Japanese movies. But they were laughing in the right places. They were gasping in the right places. Everything was working in another language, and that's when we kind of knew it's like, okay, I think we got something here. And it was kind of cool.
And then the movie was over, and the lights come up, and what's amazing the way Cannes does it is there's this aisle, it's the filmmakers aisle, where all the filmmakers are, and and all the and there's a big area in front of you, and then the lights come down on top of you, and then they bring these cameras, and the cameras project you out onto the screens everywhere. And Quentin stands up and starts to wave, and there's a standing ovation. It just goes on forever.
I had never seen anything like it. I don't know if there will be anything like that because it was so new. I mean, you know, brilliant movies are chosen every year, and they're usually worthy of it. But this was supernatural.
When the movie was over, it was an amazing feeling because everybody stood up. You know, standing ovation, 15-minute standing ovation. It was crazy.
And as you walk out at the top, you're at the top of the red carpet now. You look out, and there are thousands of people outside again, screaming. And we all stopped up top there, and Quentin has a smile on his face, and we took off for our party. We partied hard.
But then the award presentation was a couple of days later.
As the awards going on, we're not getting any awards. And each award that goes by makes it more and more intense because the only thing that was left was the Palme d'Or. And it was Kozlowski and us. They were the only two movies that could have won the last remaining slot. I'm like, oh my God, what can happen? You know, it's going to be one or the other. And they called out Pulp Fiction. And it was like, wow. Wow, it was a wow moment. And we all went up on stage, and Quentin made his beautiful speech. And it was just one of those holy shit moments.
There was this whole alternative movement, and that was the big world in the culture. The big word in the culture in 94, 95 was alternative. Everything's alternative, and yet that was the mainstream. You know, it started with Nirvana and the music and really crossed over into movies with Tarantino. And what he did was he got people excited about movies in a way that nobody had, probably since Steven Spielberg.
The whole journey that we were all going through at the time was very unusual, very unique. So it was par for the course. And everything else that had happened, that of course he would go on and win the Palme d'Or with that movie. It just makes sense. You could feel the wave that was happening. There was this new independent wave that hadn't happened in 20 years that was happening again. It happened before with Coppola and George Lucas, and when Easy Rider came out and people didn't know what youth wanted anymore because they all loved Easy Rider. That's what Pulp Fiction was. It was like the Easy Rider of the 90s. And it just threw everybody, it made everyone's head spin. So to be in that arena, it was exhilarating. I remember any idea suddenly was a great idea. It was a different time. I mean, to think you knew anything was possible. And that was scary for some, but it was freeing for a lot of us because it meant there was no one wrong move. I mean, if my movie was in Spanish with subtitles and his is Pulp Fiction and it gets released by a studio and his goes on to win the Palme d'Or, I mean, anything was possible. So you just felt like you were in the middle of this. This almost didn't feel real. So yeah, we immediately just started doing as much as we could while we could, because we thought this might not last. People might regain their senses soon. We should just take full advantage of this situation and write it as fast, as hard as we can.
Quentin had written a script. Somebody paid him to write a script. That's how he bought his Geo Metro, as a matter of fact, with that money. And some producers, Mayor Tepper and Gianni Nunari, came to Robert with this script before they went to Quentin. And they kind of already knew that they were friends. So at some festival, Robert was going with Desperado. They said, hey, Robert, this is one of Quentin's scripts. And if you direct it, he'll rewrite it. Okay, so then they went to Quentin separately when he was doing the stuff of Pulp Fiction. Same two guys, Mayor Tepper and Gianni Nunari, said, hey, Quentin, Robert has read the script and really likes it. And he's willing to direct it if you will rewrite it. So they kind of pretended like each one had already said yes, which was kind of genius, you know? Or pretty genius, I would say. And and Quentin and Robert wanting to do something together anyway, it became what Dusk Till Dawn is today. And Quentin did rewrite it. And the first half of it was pretty much what the movie is, always was. But after page 50, it was just like mayhem. Mayhem ensues, vampires. You know, and it was kind of like, oh. It was the strangest feeling to go from like this road movie to vampires. So I knew it was going to be at least fun to do.
It was my idea to cast him. I said, would you play Richie? He said, I would love to play Richie. I said, you'd be fantastic as Richie. So getting to work together in so many different ways on the same projects and on different projects, it's so fun. I mean, if we were kids in high school, we'd be working on each other's film projects.
So we finally, the deal ended up being made. The Weinsteins, at that time was Miramax, they got a pretty sweet deal. At that point in their career, they ended up getting, first dollar gross. They ended up getting, they had their own 100% approval over their marketing materials, posters, all that stuff. They got 100% approval at the final cut, which nobody had. Both of them, even though Quentin wasn't directing that one, that happened at that moment.
I think that was the most exhilarating thing about Quentin's success, was that it was our success, because it gave everybody in that at that time a chance to just ride that wave of uncertainty that was happening in the industry. So we went right away and signed up for From Dusk Till Dawn while we were doing another bizarre movie called Four Rooms. We both went off in our other directions doing whatever we wanted.
He said, so Quentin, what are you going to do now? Well, I'm going to sit and write my next thing for the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years. You're going to sit out 3 years? And he said, yeah, I'm going to sit down and really write something I really want to do. And you can afford to sit out 3 years? And he goes, you can't? With the kind of money we make? And I thought, wow, he was still driving around in that Geo Metro. And he lived, he rented this little apartment, and then he had to rent the second one. And I just, that humility and that attitude that, you know what, I'm going to live below my means so I can write my own ticket. And I thought, this guy is never going to stop surprising me, ever.
"14 years of a film that people are still receiving and learning from it, and I was a part of it. It's beyond measure how I feel about it, how much gratitude, and what a wonderful experience I had with it."
Across 110th Street, pimps trying to catch a woman that's weak.
And then to be reunited with Robert, which I don't think I've seen you in a while.
No, we saw each other at least once. I know you were doing the L Word.
Right.
But I haven't seen you for a long time.
For a long time, maybe almost 12 years.
Whatever it is, it's been a while.
It's been a
It seems
distance.
like that long ago, really.
Yes, it was like yesterday for me. Only because I want to remember all of the wonderful moments that I experienced, not only with you, but on the film and with Quentin. But literally, I wrote a journal. I've got to send you a page and
Any
see
of the
what you
juicy
think.
parts?
Yeah, they're really
Let's,
juicy. And matter of fact, because of where it is, it's so hot, there's smoke. You have to have a fire extinguisher.
Smoldering, watch
It
out.
is smoldering. But it was such an extraordinary time and experience for me that I'll never forget.
What are your fondest memories?
You want to go first?
Sure. Well, I had bumped into Quentin on the streets in Hollywood. And there was this wild man with a T-shirt on and shorts, and he was out in the street. He was macking to this woman, and so my friend says, "Hey, that's Quentin Tarantino," and I'm going, "Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs." I said, "I'd like to thank him because he mentioned me in Reservoir Dogs." So I go, "I'd love to meet him." So he calls him over, "Quentin, it's Pam Grier, and I'm writing a movie for you." Oh, come on, what drugs are you on? And I said, "Well, thank you. I love your work. And, when you send to me what my," she says, "No, I'll find you. You know how he talks." And so 6 months later, this man had invested that much time in writing a film based on Rum Punch by Elmore Leonard. And he was talking about who was going to be in it. By then, I'm hemorrhaging. Yeah, I'm like, "You're kidding. You stop." What happened is he sent me the script. I don't know if you know, with 44 cents due on the envelope. And I was in my apartment in New York, and they kept sending me these notices saying, you know, you have an envelope from Los Angeles, and it didn't say from whom, but there's 44 cents due. I say it's got to be a mattress, someone selling mattresses or flip-flops. So I go, okay, stop sending me these notices. So I tape the coins back on the notice, send it back. They deliver this manuscript in a manila envelope, and it says QT in the corner, and there's all these little stamps all over it. And I'm going, okay, I'll open it, and there it is. Jackie Brown. So I read the note, please read it and call me when you read it. And I'm reading it, and I'm going, oh my God, it's remarkable, it's extraordinary. Okay, I'm gonna be the drugged out pimp girlfriend, you know. That's the Bridget role, you know, with Sam Jackson, a black man, you know, of course, black on black, right. So it's so good. So he says, I call him and he says, oh, what do you think of it? I thought you didn't like it. I've been waiting for 3 weeks. I'm going, I'm so sorry. I just got it. And you know, you owe me 44 cents, but you know, it's okay. So I'm thinking if this man couldn't pay for postage, it's not finance. We're going to have to wait another.
This is a low budget movie.
It's going to be really low.
Oh,
It's
we've
going
done them low budgets. Bring your own wardrobe.
Yes, and your own shoes.
Yes.
And so he says, no. I said, so I like the Bridget Fonda role. And he says, no, that's Jackie Brown is for you. You're going to play Jackie Brown. And I went, I am? And I could hear it dense. There was silence on the other side. They're like, maybe you're not. And the world stopped. Because someone who is a director, an artist, a craftsman of this magnitude would write something for me. I was speechless and humbled, and I said, oh my God, I've heard of how he works and who he is, you know, and I have my icons. And I just said, oh my, and he said, and so-and-so is going to be, you know, Robert Forster. And I went, Robert Forster? Oh my God, I've had a crush on him for years. He wears great suits. And Robert De Niro and Michael Keaton. I said, Batman. And then and when Sam Jackson, I said, Samuel. I literally said, I don't believe it. I don't believe it until 10 weeks later. We began rehearsing where I met Robert, and the process was just magnificent.
And akin to Pulp Fiction, when he gave me Jackie Brown, he said, Pam Grier is Jackie Brown. And there was no debate. And there were lots of other actresses that could have very, very easily played that part. Before we made the movie, there were a lot of actresses that could have played the part. But once you see the movie, it's Pam Grier. And you can't imagine someone else playing it. But she wasn't the most logical choice, given also where her career was at the time. You know, if you went to a casting director and made a list, she would be on the list, but she might not be at the top of the list. For Quentin, there is no list. There's one name. That's it. Same thing with Robert Forster.
My career was dead. I had no agent, no manager, no lawyer, no nothing. I was spending my mornings in a little restaurant on Santa Monica Boulevard, and in walks Quentin Tarantino, and I yelled at him. I had met him once doing an audition for Reservoir Dogs. I thought I was going to get that job. I hit it out of the park, I thought. And as soon as I finished the audition and walked out of the room, Quentin came out and said, this isn't going to work out. This part is going to go to Lawrence Tierney, whom he had dedicated the script to. I hadn't bothered to read it or something. And I thought, oh, of course he's going to give it, you know. But he said, don't worry, I won't forget you. Years go by, and he does Pulp Fiction. And now it's a year or two later. And he walks into this restaurant. I see him. I'm sitting with another actor. I yell at him. He comes over. We blah, blah. What are you doing? He said, I am adapting Rum Punch. He said, why don't you read it? And, of course, I did. 6 months later, I walk into the same restaurant, and he's there, in my usual seat. And as I approach him, he lifts up the script and says, read this, see if you'll like it. And we have a conversation, and I go home and I read it. And I say, but what part does he...
Right, we both,
What part could he want me for? Because nothing seemed right. It couldn't be Max Cherry. They won't hire me for something that big. I'd had that experience a number of times that, you know, I got close to a job, and the director says, look, I can't, the distributors won't hire you.
Right.
So I had a second conversation with him in which I said, look, I don't think they're going to let you hire me for this. And he says, and I will never forget it, I hire anybody I want. And that's when the world stopped.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
No, it does
Just
stop.
like
It does
that.
stop. Your whole day.
Everything stopped. And I said, oh, Bob, you got another chance. This is the chance that you've been playing for. I kept hoping that some young guy who liked me growing up would turn into a movie maker and give me a good part. And here it is. And so there you have it. It was a gift the size of which cannot be exaggerated. And I couldn't believe that it was Max Cherry until he told me so.
Robert Forster's, I mean, what a sweet, I mean, my God, sweet man. But even more than that, amazingly subtle and giving and prepared and having, because I think one of the first things I did was I didn't hear you wash your hands in his office. And that was like the best scene, the most fun. He was perfect. Just perfect.
I didn't hear you wash your hands.
Sam Jackson. This guy, if I missed a line or if I stumbled a line, he could give it to me. He not only knew his words, but he knew my words too. You don't meet many actors who can help you out in the middle of a scene. You usually got to go off camera and say, well, wait a minute, tell me that line again, or something.
Well, it was important to me that Ordell, have that specific look. But Quentin kept telling me, I haven't figured out what he looks like, but that's not what he looks like. So I had Robert, my hairdresser, call the wig maker, and we had the wig made anyway. And then I had the little braid made for my chin and whatever. She did all the stuff. So one day when they were having a production meeting, I just put all the stuff on. And something happened. I wanted some water or something, and I just got out of his chair and I ran through the production meeting, headed for the craft service table, and they were going, wait, hey, who are you? Way to get out of here. And I walked over to the table, and he was like, oh my God, okay. And he said, that's what, I said, it's Ordell. And he's like, okay, you're right.
To be a part of someone's dream was extraordinary and magical in a sense. And then the day when we have our first day of rehearsal, and in walks Samuel Jackson, Robert De Niro, Michael Keaton, Robert Forster, and then Bridget Fonda, her legacy of her family. And as we're sitting at the table, just molding our characters with Quentin, and we're more listening to him. And I was just struck by his energy and his ability to, with each one of us, have distinct direction and distinct ability to say, okay, this is Sam's beats, Pam's beats, Michael's beats, Robert De Niro's beats, and be a maestro in front of us. And we're all instruments in this fabulous orchestra.
And I love the fact that Quentin let us take our time doing stuff. I remember that moment in the car when I'm looking through the books and can't find my money, and I just want to go, it's Jackie Brown. And Quentin goes, no, take your time. Take your time. Go through every possibility of what could have gone wrong, and then come to that conclusion. And I was like, really? You gonna let me, really? That's a lot of cinema time for nothing to happen. But then I had to go back to this thing that somebody told me early on when I first started doing movies. They said, every time a camera's on you, always make sure there's something on your mind. No matter what you're talking about, you can be talking about that thing, but know what the next thought is or where you're trying to go with that thing so that people can see that. So that was an opportunity for me to sit there and kind of, ruminate, run through every scenario, everything else before I came up with Jackie Brown. And it's one of my sort of like favorite moments, aside from killing Bobby. It's good.
When we first found out that De Niro was interested in the movie, De Niro called up and said he wanted the Robert Forster part. And Quentin said, no, I cast this guy, Robert Forster. And then I remember going, Quentin, ask him if he wants to play the other guy. Ask him if he wants to play the other part. And Quentin was like, no, he's not going to do it, you know. He wants to play the lead, I understand, you know. I said, well, let's just ask him. And he did, and De Niro said, yeah, I'd love to. And he played the other part. And the scene where De Niro shoots Bridget Fonda, and right before he shoots her, he said, you know, if you say another word, I'm going to shoot you. And she turns around and she starts to talk, and he shoots her without any fanfare.
Don't seem sure to me.
Hey, don't say anything else, okay? Keep your mouth shut.
Well,
I mean, don't say one fucking word, okay?
okay, Louis.
And I was standing right kind of near the camera, and De Niro shoots her, and he just kept walking out of frame. And he walked right up to me, and he goes, that was fun.
Bobby is just unbelievable. Bobby's unbelievable.
What was it like to work with Pam Grier? I mean, she's amazing.
You know what? I was okay with it for a long time. I was like, yeah, Pam Grier, yeah, I'm having a good time. Yeah, she's a nice woman, da-da-da. Until that day, I was in her apartment, and I had my hands around her throat. And, you know, it was just at that moment when I got my hands around her throat where I went, wow, you are choking coffee. This is coffee. You're choking coffee. Which was kind of like, oh my God. You know, all those masturbatory fantasies of the 60s came flooding back to me. It's like, I got my hands on her, I'm up against her, her breast is checking my chest, and it was like, wow, who ever thought I would be here? And you know, it's just stuff like that. It kind of happens once a movie. Sometimes, I remember when I was doing Sphere, it happened, I was doing this scene, it was just me and Dustin, and it was kind of like, that's Dustin Hoffman. And then when I was doing Jackie Brown, I was sitting there, you know, talking to Bobby in that bar.
So what'd she say?
Man, she ain't have to say shit. I know Melanie. That bitch gonna be fucking you 2 minutes after I'm out the door. Melanie real good about throwing the fucking niggas away. I mean, she ain't no damn good at it, but she likes to fuck.
Oh, so she ain't your girlfriend.
Is that what you thought?
No, I wasn't sure, no.
But you fucked her anyway, though, huh?
Well, the not your girlfriend part I felt more about.
Well, I hope you felt appropriately guilty afterwards.
Afterwards, I did.
Oh, shit. And I realized, wow, it's Robert De Niro. I mean, because those are people, when I was, you know, a person in New York or even in Atlanta going to college, watching them on screen, it never occurred to me that I would see them, meet them, let alone be in a scene with them. So it's kind of heady stuff when it happens. You know? And for them to look at you and go, well, that was great. You kind of go, for real? Okay. It's like, you go to your trailer and clap your hands and have a good time.
After you see Jackie Brown read Rum Punch and go, is this the best one? How did he do it? It's just extraordinary. And there's so many things to think about. The scenes, the adaptation that just Quentin. And he is, in many ways, because he has so many textures, so many aspects about him, his music, he finds music and scores that tell a story without words. When Jackie comes out of the jail, her timbre, her speed, her dragging of her feet, been stripped of everything, not knowing where to go. Someone's going to kill her. She's betrayed someone. She has no job, no future. That was the last job she had. So she's going home to nothing. And just her posture And Quentin sets it up, and you don't have to do a second take. You just, let's just do one for safety. But you never can do that first take better because it's so authentic, so on point. I think everyone wants to work with him because you will learn to direct yourself. And I learned more about myself. And he's so intuitive. He's objective, and then he's watching you and helping you evolve because there's so much that you can't experience when you're in the moment. You know, like just kicking, how you'll twitch your leg or kick your leg or something that you do. He'll say, "Oh, do you notice you're doing that?" And you go, "No, well, you are. I like that. Keep it." You know, so, oh, okay. So he allows you, when you work with him, you're liberated.
This movie gave me a gigantic lift, and you know, for that, I'm sure Pam and I both were really thankful, indebted, and grateful to our friend Quentin.
I'll send you a postcard.
Will you?
I sure will, partner.
It's such a consummate film. It's kind of cursed because it's not Pulp Fiction 2 in a lot of people's minds. To me, you know, it's his best film because, you know, all the characters are very defined and well stated. The action plays out subtly and completely for every character in the film. There's a completion, even though I'm still not happy about the way I died because I think Ordeal's smarter than that. But we had to stop somewhere.
If I never work again, I have been to the mountaintop. This is an extraordinary experience with someone.
There's nobody that can beat Quentin at that game being the game of film history, knowing about movies, both films from the past and current ones that other people never even crosses their horizon. I always like to joke around with him and say, you bought a screening room that had a house attached. And that's kind of the way I look at it. Like, you know, the screening room is this phenomenal place. It's his cathedral, if you will. It's where he lives most of his life. And he's a film buff like nobody has ever seen before, combined with a phenomenal memory that's frankly scary.
One of the first dinners we had, we were sitting there together talking, and we started talking about movies, and then we started talking about Hong Kong movies, because I collect Asian films too. I watch Asian films all the time. And we started talking about Asian films, and he was like, I never had a conversation about these films with anybody else, because nobody else watches them. And then when we started to work, he would pass by my trailer, and he would always hear somebody kicking, screaming, getting chopped or something in my trailer, because I watch Hong Kong movies all day long in my trailer.
I remember one year I made a movie and he made a theater. He said, all my friends made movies this year, I made a theater. He made a home theater that was like the end-all be-all of home theaters. And he had a ton of film prints. And we got to watch movies in style. We just said, this is the life. Because I remember when we were doing Dusk Till Dawn, I'd go over to his apartment over there on Crescent Heights. Yeah. And he had his little 16 millimeter projector, and he'd be threading up white lightning. And we'd be watching on a bed sheet. And I remember then he turned to me, and we still quote it because it's so funny, because I remind him about this all the time. He said, I remember, Quentin, we went there, we're watching White Lightning, and you turn to me and you go, isn't this the life? Don't we have the best life? We're sitting here watching our own film prints. It's this little rinky-dink 16 millimeter, but that's was the life.
When we were in Berlin for Inglourious Basterds, he would have one of his 35 millimeter prints shipped to Berlin every week, and we would have a screening for the crew every week. And it was great. It was like on a Wednesday or a Thursday night, 7 o'clock, everyone was done working for the day. We walked across the street, we ate pizza, we had beer, and he would screen one of his prints, and he does an amazing introduction for them. And it's somehow always, not always, but typically related to the movies, somehow, some way. In Berlin, he screened one of Till Schweiger's first movies, which, you know, Till was like, you have a print of my 35, you have a 35 millimeter print of my movie? Like, couldn't even believe it. So it's related to the cast or the crew or the script or the location or wherever we are. And I think that the crew loves it. I mean, they thrive on it. Sometimes I'll be like, Quentin, why are you screening a movie at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Nobody's gonna go. And he's like, yes, they are. And they do. They love it. It's a bonding experience. And it's just, it's special. It's one of the special things that he does.
He's seen more films and knows more about them and has a point of view about little details of each one of them than any 10 other people combined you could ever meet. It's a phenomenal gift he has.
What Quentin also did was he really validated genre movies in a way that no one quite had before. He brought attention to films that really had been overlooked. He has this magic wand of cool that anything he touches becomes cool.
He loves celluloid, he loves film, he loves the images of films, he loves posters, he loves anything that has to do with his business. And much like Martin Scorsese, it's the same sort of, thank God we have these people like Coppola, like Scorsese, like Lucas, who love the value. They see a value beyond what most people see in a bunch of film cans. And Quentin is a collector of prints of movies, even obscure movies.
What Tarantino did was he used his clout to immediately bring these films to the public. Like he released Jack Hill's Switchblade Sisters, and suddenly everybody's getting turned on to Jack Hill, and they're all looking at Pam Grier movies, and they're watching blaxploitation films. And then he brought Lucio Fulci's The Beyond into theaters. And these are films that you couldn't even find on videotape. I mean, maybe there was one crummy VHS tape, and now you're seeing a new, pristine 35mm print in the theaters. And that's what was so cool about it, was Quentin, for as much as he's a guy who grew up in a video store, is all about the theatrical experience. He wants you to see these movies in a crowd with other people. And he still keeps that alive today. What's so great about Quentin is he told me the death of interesting cinema was watching movies at premieres and in screening rooms. I said, now that you're a director, can't you get any print sent to your house? He's like, that's how you lose touch. He said, the only way to tell what people still want to see is to go see a movie with a paying audience. They'll tell you whether they're interested or not. And when he's researching and writing his own movies, he does these QT fests where he'll play movies for a week, but it's almost like a market research to see which material's still connecting with a modern audience.
The first time I met Quentin Tarantino was at a press junket for a film called Iron Monkey. I think Harvey and the Miramax team at board, and Quentin was presenting to the world. When me and Quentin met, what we found we had in common was the love of Kung Fu movies. And I think it was during that moment we realized that we both had a vast knowledge of the Asian cinema.
When he shows you a movie, he shows it to you in a different way. And he would have his film festivals, his Grindhouse film festivals, type film festivals down in Austin. He educated the audience down there too. He says, you don't come in here and you don't laugh at the movies. You laugh with the movies, but you're not above the movies. So whatever I show you, you watch it as if you watch it and take it seriously. If it's entertaining and it's funny, you laugh. You don't put yourself above the movie. So that kind of a mindset's really essential to any of those movies that you watch. So anything that I watched, I always had that in mind. Anything that he would show me in his house, he would give a very eloquent speech before the movie started about why he was showing it to you, what he liked about it, gave you his point of view, and kind of pre-framed it, and you watch it and you enjoyed it in its context, no matter what it was. In its context, you understood and you got what it was.
Part of the reason Austin is so on fire for movies and so many filmmakers are coming out of the woodworks from there is because they were exposed to things like that. So the encouragement of seeing things they never even heard of, and Quentin explaining the value of it, the historical value or what it meant to him was huge, the generosity of that.
Quentin really has always been pushing other filmmakers and really helping and getting behind them because he knows he's from the same world. We didn't inherit this. We really came in this on our own and we're shepherded by people who really liked our work. And so we do that back to other people who, we know the task is daunting. You come in and you try to be original voice and you try to do something in this industry. It's tough. So any kind of help you can get or inspiration or encouragement you can get along the way is fantastic. So we try to do that as much as we can. I know we put out contests sometimes or anything that just kind of get people motivated to come and do something and support them and see what happens. You never know what happens. You throw those seeds around, they grow and they sprout and others that you find that just come walking by, you give them as much inspiration and help as you can because you appreciate that. You've had that done to you and you want to give it back.
Comes from the point of you just meet somebody that he really grooves with, and he can't help himself. He wants to get involved and work with them, and he considers it like a privilege that they invite him in, as opposed to the other way around. So that's, I think that's again, another sign of the purity of artist in him.
You know, what I realized from Quentin was that I was in the presence of a genius, a walking encyclopedia of film. And I asked Quentin, can he be my teacher, my mentor? And he agreed. And it's kind of cool because, because Quentin told me, he was a big Wu-Tang fan, he loves my work and things like that. And we just was buddies that just both had our own separate worlds. And for me, people look at me as the abbot of Wu-Tang and a teacher to many. And for me to take somebody on and be my teacher, or my Sifu or master, as they call it in martial arts, is unique. But I saw a master, and I wanted to be a student, and I asked him, and he agreed. And eventually, that led to me traveling to China, to Beijing, sitting on a set of Kill Bill with a notebook, and really absorbing the process of filmmaking from a modern master.
With Quentin, the fact that he gets to expand his universe and his relationship with Eli and being involved in the Hostel movies and, Quentin seeing that and saying, oh yeah, this is great.
I mean, Eli loves movies just as much as Quentin does. Eli loves a different type of movie, and he feeds off of it. And I think that he looks to Quentin as a mentor, and they're lucky to have each other. They really are. They're lucky to be able to collaborate and work together and teach each other things.
It really is pretty exciting to see that he has that level of interest in cultivating future filmmakers.
As time went on through the course of filming Kill Bill, I think we, he shot different locations from China to Japan and then Mexico. We was in Mexico at a place called Jerez, great resort. I think somebody once asked Quentin the question like, well, what is this guy doing with your movie? He said, no, it's just a friend of mine, he's just observing. I haven't figured out what I want to do with him. And I had no idea what he wanted to do with me or how I could help. I just wanted to learn. But maybe a week later, we were at the table again, and I don't know if somebody asked a question or not, but he made an announcement. I figured out what I want Bobby to do for the film. I want him to be my composer. He don't use composers, and he told me, I want you to kind of like produce the music the way you do your albums, Wu-Tang. He loved how I work in the music world. And I was like, it'd be my pleasure to do any capacity to help out with this film. And there's another guy I like to call my classmate, Eli Roth, who is, we see him at Quentin House and we'll hang out together and travel together. And, we come with the idea of me bringing one of my visions to life. So then we presented to Quentin and he said, yes, you guys are ready. RZA's ready. And you guys doing it together would be great, in his view. But it wasn't until Quentin came over to China and he was sitting in Video Village with me. And Quentin taps me on the shoulder and says, you're doing a great job. And I was like, I've graduated, I'm doing it, I'm making my teacher proud. I think I did something one day on the set, he said, the student taught the master something today. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, wow, like, I'm really showing and proving that I could be a good student, you know what I mean? And I could take, this wisdom and apply it to my art and bring forth, more additive to this genre of movie making.
In this business where not everybody is family, these guys are family. And we're really lucky to have it. And sometimes everyone's like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? But that's what life is about. It's about, we all make movies and we're all part of the circus, but these guys support each other in a really amazing way.
When it came time for me to do my first movie, it was Reservoir Dogs, and it was in that weird situation because I didn't know a damn thing about editing, but I knew my movie. So I had to find somebody who would be inspired by me, but wouldn't be the boss, wouldn't just tell me that I know what I'm talking about. I know I don't know what I'm talking about, all right? But I wanted the nice person, all right, that would be fantastically talented and would take care of me. And then when Sally Menke, my editor, I'm really positive the only reason you guys are giving me this is because because you were appreciating Sally. It's a de facto Sally Award. All right. She came. She came in and for the interview, and the movie she had done Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I gotta tell you, man, you know, before I started Kill Bill, I told Uma, I go, hey, we've got the editor of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I don't care what anybody says, Donatello is not that good of a fighter. That's all Sally. So she came in, and I'd actually seen one of the movies she had done before. I thought she was so cool, I didn't want to watch any of her work because I didn't want to talk myself out of it. I wanted to go from my first instinct. Don't put editing under a microscope. If I think I can work with her and I think she's talented and she's just got it, she's got it. And here's the deal. She is my only true, genuine collaborator from beginning to end, and that's the way it is. I'm a writer-director, so I'm always coming from like the written word prospect of it all, and that's why it takes such a long time, because I'm always gonna face that blank page every time I start a new one. And the thing about it was, I've always considered this is the case, is your final draft of the script, the final, that's it, boom, boom, perfect, send it to the Smithsonian. It's just the sloppy first cut of your movie. And the final cut of your movie is the last draft of the script. And so tonight I want to thank my co-writer, Sally Menke. Thank you very much. This has been a wonderful evening.
We came out of NYU Film School, and then she spent the next 4 or 5 years in New York cutting just documentaries. What really made her the editor she was is that for the longest time, she had to deal with a collection of footage and make a story out of it rather than it being scripted. She also, I think, because a lot of those documentaries were verite style, was dealing with a whole collection of interesting people. And so, in a way, it's like a way to study performance, because you're looking at all these different people and you're looking at subtext, the same thing, but in real people. So she moved from documentaries into drama. Her first movie was a little independent movie with Griffin Dunn in it that was really first-time director, kind of raw, and so that was her first drama. And then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was really her first sort of like, oh wow, this is a Hollywood. For her, at that time, it was a Hollywood movie. She loved working with Quentin. I'd come to pick her up or something, and I'd just hear giggling. So you'd come through the edit room, and it was in this crappy little office, and I remember the door would be closed, and I'd just hear Quentin laughing and Sally laughing, and I thought, what? I thought this was an intense movie, but I know it's comic as well, but they would just laugh. And that, I think that happened every time I went to the edit room and Quentin and Sally were in the room working. I would hear giggling. It was like two kids appreciating their work.
We don't ever know what happened in that room. We don't know what happened between Sally and Quentin. They're the only two that know. Whatever it was magic and it was amazing. And it's unfortunate that she's not here for him and for all of us. But they were amazing together.
My memory is that really from the second they started working together, Sally just loved working with Quentin. And I'm assuming from all the laughter that Quentin loved working with Sally. And I think I think she expected that, and hoped that they would keep working together after Reservoir Dogs.
As soon as Quentin was done with the script or getting ready, she'd be like, is he gonna hire me again? She never took it for granted that she was that first call, that he was never gonna make a movie without her. She would always say, oh, I don't know if he loves me anymore, and I think he's mad at me, and I don't know if he's gonna hire me again. And I was like, Sally, of course he's gonna hire you again. Or I would say to Quentin, I know you're almost done, but Sally has this other movie. Should she take this other movie? No, she shouldn't take that other movie. You know, I mean, it was just a given that Sally was gonna be on every one of his movies, but she questioned herself, as we all do sometimes. But it's amazing to see it from the other side, where you're like, of course you're gonna be on his movie.
I mean, I'll never forget meeting Sally for the first time. She came in all bubbly, full of enthusiasm. It was almost like Quentin and Sally, they could just finish each other's sentences. It was just this intangible thing that happens between people. There's such a trust, such a bond that happened between them.
Quentin called me right after he met Sally. And he said, I've met this gal. She's the one. She's gonna be my editor. I just know there's something about her. We're meant to work together. And that was it, you know. They had the most amazing relationship.
I mean, I've been in, ADR sessions where, like, she was around and he was kind of distracted, and she made sure that things went right, and she could actually speak in his voice in a specific kind of way. And she had a skill that he didn't have, that he relied upon in a very honest sort of way, and he learned a lot from her about how his process works in terms of the kinds of stuff that she would put together for him and say, well, this is what you mean. And her style is as definitive in his films as his directorial style. They're almost the same thing. He knew what to shoot for her to make his film sing in a specific way, and she knew how to arrange the music to make his notes a real symphony.
Those two together was such a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, such a great sandwich for filmmaking.
She loved what we did as much as we loved what she did for us. I mean, even though we don't know how to say it sometimes because we think we did it, so, oh yeah, that's the way I did it. And if you look at it really closely, you'll see, oh wow, she made me look a little better there because I was getting ready to mess that line up, and she snipped around it and made that to kind of work. But I always enjoyed being in her presence because she made me feel like I was special in the process. And I always know that, actors in my mind are like the least special people in that process because, everything else, you gotta have the lights, you gotta have this, you gotta have that. And editors can make or break your performances. And she always found the best parts of me to put on screen. And that made me love her more. And she always said that I didn't have any bad parts, which made me love her even more. It was great.
Sally always pushed the bar higher than anybody thought it could go. That was how she felt about the work. So it was never good enough. It always had to be better. We used to call it the disease at NYU. You just couldn't stop making the movie. You do anything, to keep trying to make it more effective. And I think they were both like that, which is probably why, that became such a great collaboration. That sequence in Pulp Fiction with the needle was one of her favorite sequences. I remember when she was cutting it, there was a moment all of a sudden it just went, and it started, and it worked. It's not really about fancy editing. It was really about creating the scene and the performances and being in the right place at the right time. So she always liked that, but I think she was really proud of Inglourious. She loved what she did in Inglourious.
Alors, Emmanuel, puis-je vous appeler Emmanuel? Oui. Et donc, Emmanuel, expliquez-moi, comment se fait-il qu'une jeune femme comme vous en arrive à posséder un cinéma? Verdict. Comme je disais, pas si mauvais.
You know what? She liked all of it. She loved House of Blue Leaves and Kill Bill. There's a moment she liked, and I've used it sometimes to illustrate that when you have contrast, you create excitement. In Reservoir Dogs, where they had no money, no time, it's a very static scene. I think it's Harvey and Steve Buscemi in the bathroom, and Steve Buscemi starts telling him what happened, what went wrong, what happened. And it goes on for a really long time. It's just one shot, if my memory's right. And then all of a sudden it cuts into this Steadicam shot of Steve running down the street shooting after the robbery. And it's really only two angles, from behind and in front of him. And it feels like the most exciting thing you've ever seen in your life, because before it, you were like completely static. And then this thing goes bang at you, and you're like, whoa! And I think that was the beginning of sort of that kind of, in Inglourious, when they're in the club, that scene is broken by intense violence too, and it's sort of that ability for it to go to hell all of a sudden, real fast and really in your face, which is it's a really effective cutting technique. Also in Pulp Fiction, when Bruce Willis is in the Honda. And he stops and looks up, and Ving Rhames is crossing the street with his fast food container. She always enjoyed like finding the moment where she kind of lulled the audience into something, or stopped to open up something and then slapped them again. So, but it was designed. I mean, Quentin designed it that way, so it's not Sally's fault. But Sally loved. She loved doing that. She loved manipulating those moments.
He was just a real partner, and he would talk about their relationship, like when they were working on the movie together, and she was pregnant, and I felt like it was his child too. I mean, like he was part of the father too, because he was there with her through all her pregnancy, and it was a really close relationship. I mean, it made me almost envious that I didn't have an editor to share that relationship with. I'm always in there cutting by myself just to save money. But yeah, she was terrific. Sally is a big contributor and a real voice in his movies.
When she was pregnant with Bella, she was afraid that all the murderous noises coming out of the Avid were going to somehow affect how Bella came out, and she would have this violent child that remembered all this profanity and horror. So she was always sort of, and she was of course always worried about that there was radiation coming out of the monitors. So she bought special UV filters to protect her. But she's actually in there pregnant, still working away. She was very quick, very fast editor, and very efficient. And when she leave at the end of the day, she was here for dinner and making dinner and taking care of the kids. That was her first priority.
The only movie that she edited for you was it Tom Goes to the Bar? Was that?
Yeah, my first 8-minute movie is the only time we worked together.
I thought to myself, at last, here was a place where you could let your hair down. It's filled with people like you wouldn't believe. People who finish what they start.
Oh, we cut some documentaries before. But yeah, that was the last time. I could never book her. She was always busy with Quentin. But I think also it was sort of a silent agreement between us that our jobs would be separate, that we would help each other and collaborate in the way that, I'd read her script and she'd read mine, and she'd ask me how she was doing and I'd ask her how I was doing. But our careers were separate. And I think that was eventually a smart move, even if we didn't consciously do it. That's the way it happened. And it made it much easier to come together and go, oh, this happened to me today. Oh, yeah, this happened to me. Plus, Sally would have been too much of a taskmaster for me. She would have been hassling me about, why didn't you get this close up, and how could you tell a story like that? And it would have been, it would have been a married couple in an edit room, and that's not fair to anybody.
It's strange to think of a Tarantino film without Sally Menke, because she's really his other half. I mean, they were such close friends and collaborators. And I was in the fortunate position of being able to work side by side with Sally, where I was acting in Inglourious Basterds, but also directed Nation's Pride. So I thought Sally would cut it, but I shot so much footage. They're like, all right, let's just set up an Avid for Eli. So Sally was in one room and I was in the next room, and I would cut some scenes together, and Sally would come in and take a look at it. And she was just the most wonderful, loving person. I mean, all around the Avid were pictures of her kids, and her beautiful kids, Lucas and Bella, and the dog Zoe, and her husband, Dean.
I knew her as a mom of her beautiful children, but her daughter Bella and my daughter Zoe, they went to summer camp in upstate New York, a place called French Woods. And so one summer, just 4 years ago, I think it was, we were there at the same time, in this sweltering heat, visiting our kids, doing plays, and ended up on the lawn, just hanging in. It was just kind of this moms bonding about daughter stuff. Our kids were just going into that teenage, intense time, and she was a wonderful, warm, connected human being.
Yeah, there's a song that I wrote called "Gone." That when I first wrote it, I was writing it with the idea of people we lost. Of course, I lost my cousin ODB, and I wrote some of the lyrics towards him. But it wasn't until Sally passed that I finished the song. And instead of selling it, I gave it out to the world as a gift to her. And, she touched many people's lives, and they was collecting things that, for charity and things to, to send to the family. And I was like, well, it's easy to send money. It's easy, to send flowers. What can I give? And she always told me she dug my music, and she like, say, children like Wu-Tang Clan, when she called me for some tickets one day. So I said, what can I give? To show her, how I feel, and show, how much I respected her as a person, and will miss her. And so the song "Gone," I put it out on a Wednesday. It was the first song I ever gave away for free. I said, well, I'm gonna do Woo Wednesday, and I'm gonna give a song to my friend Sally Menke. It's called "Gone." And in the song, it does mention that through our seeds, we all reach eternity. Peace and blessings is just another journey. And what I mean by that is through our seeds, meaning through our children, we all going to reach eternity because we keep reproducing ourselves, and our ways and actions through our genetics will come out, but also through our seeds of thought or through our seeds of work. So her films that she worked on and the people who she's spoken to and inspired, and through her children, will carry on to eternity. And that's what that song was all about, is that, it's just another part of this journey.
Woke up this morning hoping it was all a nightmare. You're gone. Tried to get out of my bed, I couldn't find no reason. You're gone. Breaks my heart, 'cause I will never see you again. It breaks my heart, 'cause I will never see you again. No, no. 'cause I will never see you again. And my heart aches, 'cause I will never see you again.
You know, Quentin thinks a lot about his art and what he's doing, and he knows that he's only on the planet for a short period of time, and he has a certain amount of work to do while he's here. And he's very conscious about, you know, the fact that he has an extraordinary gift. He knows that, not in any kind of a egotistical way. If anything, I'd say it's more a sense of responsibility that he's told me before that, you know, everybody's given certain gifts and you're on the planet to do a certain thing, and this is what he was put here to do. And so he takes it really seriously.
When we were shooting Inglourious Basterds, the crew went out one night and there was a video screen playing Kill Bill. And Quentin and I were standing there talking, and the scene with Go-Go comes up. And the whole spinning the spike ball and the fight between Uma and Go-Go. Quentin couldn't take his eyes off of it. And I said to him, how many times have you seen this scene? And he said, I don't care. He said, it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. And the fact that he was riveted to the screen, it was astonishing to me to watch him watching his work and still just be staring at it in this proud father sort of scenario.
So I went to go visit him on the set of Kill Bill, and he looked beat. I mean, he was just really, it was a long shoot. I mean, well, of course, they split it into 2 movies. It wasn't one movie, it was a saga. He didn't realize he was making a saga that was going to be split into 2 full saga-length movies. And I said, have you been to the editing room? And he said, no, I haven't. I don't want to watch anything until I'm done shooting. So he said, it's like, can I go see? I want to go see what you're doing. So I said, yeah, you go see for me. And I went, and Sally was in there. Sally was all excited. She goes, yeah, he won't come into the edit room. He wants to wait till he's done. And so I watched some of the stuff, and it was amazing. And so I went back, and I said, you've got to go into the edit room. You owe it to yourself to go see what you're doing. You're working on a classic. Cut together some footage, show it to your crew. They will go apeshit, and it's going to give them new life to finish this movie. When they see that that's what they're working on, it will give them a whole new sense of energy. I reminded them that's what we used to do on our movies. On Dusk Till Dawn, we showed a trailer the first week so that the crew knew they were working on a movie that was going to stand the test of time. So he went, he was so tired, I guess, he just succumbed, went, checked it out, got really excited, cut something, showed a crew. I remember coming back to visit, and Stevie J was walking around with a spring in his step and going, I'm so pumped. And you know that the schedule that seemed like so long now seemed very short. Now they knew that they were on a mission to finish this movie. And I guess that really affected him, because when I was watching the movie credits at the end of Kill Bill, it says at the end, special thanks to my brother. Because I think that's what helped get him through that movie, because I don't know how he did it. It's just, what a job that is. It was a huge amount of Herculean effort to make that movie.
Well, he has such a naturally collaborative spirit. You know, even the idea that him and Rodriguez relish in working together. They're so dramatically different filmmakers. It's astounding that they could even coexist in the same world, but they do.
We would be bouncing around, and yeah, I'll do music for Kill Bill 2, and you come direct a little sequence in Sin City. I mean, that's what we would have done in high school. We would have been helping each other out. Not just to get the help of that person, but to also get just the juice and the excitement that comes from it, just that overabundance of creativity that happens when you get people in the room. I have it on tape somewhere. I let the camera roll in the room when Quentin came in the morning of the shoot for Sin City, and he brought his take of what he was going to do with the material, because it was genius. And it was so simple. It was genius and simple. He just said, your whole movie's voiceover. I don't want to do that in post because I'm only here one day. So I think if we can get the actor to do it, he should say his voiceover out loud. It should be a monologue that he delivers. because he's talking to himself anyway. So rather than be a voiceover that we record later, some later date, make that guy Clive Owen, who fortunately was a brilliant actor, and I saw Quentin give him the confidence to be able to nail that speech on the day. This voiceover you're going to do months from now you're doing it right now on camera. In the next 10 minutes, can you memorize it?
When we did Grindhouse, I remember there being a T-shirt that was given out that one quote was from Robert about, get that old fucking camera off my set. And then underneath it, Quentin saying, get that digital shit out of here. And like they were sort of having these little sort of fun ribbing at each other about technical versus the way people work. But, the common denominator is they just love it. They love what they do.
The idea was to go to Austin and the two of them to make these movies and go back to back and make these 60-minute movies, and for us to use all of Robert's crew and to shoot down at Troublemaker and just be in Austin and have fun and just bang it out. And Quentin and Zoe really connected on Kill Bill, and he basically wrote Death Proof for her. And he wanted to just make this fun little movie, and he did. I mean, we shot it to look not great. We had all these cute little girls down there. It was just supposed to be a fun little thing for him and Robert to do, and that's what it was.
Quentin is a genius at holding tension. In Inglourious, that first, the way it opens, that's really basically two guys at a table, and I'm like this the whole time. And I remember when I read it, I was like that, but when I saw it, it was about 100 times worse. And that's more nerve-wracking than people blowing up crap and shooting each other ever is. As is the other long scene in the basement of the restaurant, which I remember watching a 35-minute version of, and it was fine. I wouldn't have done anything with it, and they still compressed it. Probably because no one would believe that one scene could be that long.
There's a special rung in hell reserved for people who waste good scotch. Seeing as I may be rapping on the door momentarily. I must say, damn good stuff, sir. Now, about this pickle we find ourselves in. It would appear there's only one thing left for you to do.
And what would that be?
Stiglitz.
Say auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi boss.
He's doing the things that only he wants to see. He's not doing them for a result. And that's why they're successful, and that's why they have lasting impact. Because he makes them for his theater. He makes them for himself. And if other people like what he likes, they'll love it. And most people like what he likes because they all love his movies.
And he just does what he does. He doesn't think about the ramifications of everything other than the ramifications to him and his story sense. Mm-hmm. Not to pander to an audience, or he'll do in Pulp Fiction that shoot draws a square, or it says 2 minutes later, and that doesn't appear anywhere else in the movie.
The fuck is this place?
This is Jack Rabbit Slim's. An Elvis man should love it.
Come on, man, let's go get a steak.
You can get a steak here, Daddy-O. Don't be a...
Oh, after you, kitty cat.
And that idiosyncratic, I'll do what I want thing, the freshness and distinction of it and lack of formula is what makes it so appealing.
His vision has never wavered. It really hasn't. He's made the movies that he has wanted to make all of his career. And you know what? He doesn't churn a movie out every 3 months. He crafts them, he protects them, he nurtures them, he takes heat for them, and he defends them. I love the fact that he has never sold out. He really loves what he does, and that he protects his movies. And the stories that he tells, they're controversial, and they're raw, and they're visceral, and they're violent, but they're so mesmerizing and captivating that you can't take your eyes off of them.
he's one of the 2 or 3 filmmakers that I will go and see everything he does as soon as I can. And actually, I remember he called me up to see Kill Bill Part 1. He said, come on, I'm going to screen it. Let's come to screening in New York City. And we went to the screening, and he sat next to me. And while I was watching, he was like, he was getting into the movie and saying, hey, look, like, talking to me through the movie.
He's only making movies for a small part of his life. The rest of the time, he's your friend Quentin. He's your brother Quentin. I go hang out with Quentin. He goes off to shoot a movie. I don't see him for 8 months, sometimes a year. He comes back. I watch the movie, and I'm like, and you forget he's Superman. You forget that he's not Clark Kent. You forget, oh my God, I forgot you're that guy who makes these movies. How did you do that? And you know him, and you've seen him do it, but you still can't believe the result. You look at the result, and it's almost like you're looking at somebody else. That's still such a great feeling to get. When I finish watching Inglourious Basterds, when I've seen stuff from Django, I'm like, how did you do that? When I saw Kill Bill 2, I said, how did you do that movie? And he goes, oh, come on, you know how I did it. I go, yeah, but I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you shot that thing. That's impossible. I never could have done that. I never could have done it in a million years. How long were you shooting? He told me how long he was shooting. I couldn't have done that. Could not have done it. I don't know how you did it. It's amazing when somebody you know so well can still surprise the hell out of you. And that's what he is. I mean, he's amazing. He's just amazing.
He pushed the boundaries of genre and storytelling and narrative structure and a certain kind of energy and tone and a way to tell a story that was so completely Quentin. I mean, if you look at sort of who are the masters of cinema in the 20th and 21st century, Quentin will stand tall in that group.
What's interesting about Quentin's fame is that it is entirely from his talent and his gift and his passion for film. And that is very rare in our society. He's famous for his achievement as an accomplishment and his talent. And that's a real unique, special fame, I think. Deserved.
You can look at movies before Quentin Tarantino and movies after. He's that much of a pivotal figure in world cinema.
The unsung hero, he has a very humble beginning of being a fan of film. And the fan of film becomes a master filmmaker. The best thing that I could say, I'll take a title of his film and say that he's injected into the process of filmmaking, Pulp Fiction.
The mosaic of your whole career is viewed at one point, but in the moment-to-moment measurement of your career, you're delivering each new thing. And some people might be surprised, some people might expect only great things from you, but there's always this pressure to deliver a good show. And that's okay. That's what we're here for, to deliver a good show. And he can do it better than anyone.
And he just loves what he does. And that is part of it. You mean you're putting on a show. You're putting on a show and you roll cameras while you're putting on the show. So he's the best showman there is.